The lights went out, alarms screamed, a patient lay open on the table, and $1 million backup system failed. In the chaos, a woman in scrubs began drawing on the wall. "Who is she?" the CEO demanded. A nurse whispered, "She's not a nurse. She's the architect." The hum of machines was constant. Until it was not. At precisely 10:42 in the morning, every monitor in Operating Theater 3 went dark. The flatline tone screamed once, then vanished. Overhead lights snapped out with a sickening pop, followed by silence thick enough to choke on. Then came chaos. "Backup! Switch to emergency backup!" someone shouted. A nurse knocked over a tray of surgical tools. The head surgeon cursed. A patient lay unconscious on the table, chest open, surrounded by a frozen team. Across the hospital, alarms blared. The power outage was total. Hallway lights flickered sporadically, vitals monitors crashed, electronic locks failed. The system, state-of-the-art and valued at over 300 million United States dollars, had fallen apart in under 20 seconds. The CEO, Jordan Reed, charged through the administration wing, suit jacket unbuttoned, sweat breaking at his temple. "Where the hell is engineering? Where is systems? Get them on the line now!" "We cannot reach them," a junior tech called out. "We think they are stuck in sub-level 3. Door locks are down." "Then find someone else," Jordan barked. But someone already had. In a side hallway near diagnostics, a woman in oversized scrubs was down on one knee, scribbling directly onto the painted wall with a red marker. Her strokes were quick, precise. Circles, nodes, emergency bypass schematics. She was muttering variables under her breath. "Who is that?" Jordan demanded, storming into the hall, stopping cold at the sight. A nearby nurse glanced between them. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "She is not a nurse." Jordan turned sharply. "Then who is she?" The nurse swallowed. "She is the architect." Silence fell. Even the flickering overhead lights seemed to hold their breath. Jordan looked at the woman. Face calm, eyes sharp, grease-stained fingers moving without hesitation. And something in his gut shifted. She was not reacting to the chaos. She was controlling it. And suddenly, nothing about her was ordinary. 6 years earlier, Samantha Lee stood in front of a conference room full of engineers explaining the load distribution model of a new smart hospital infrastructure she helped design. At 29, she was already being called the system whisperer. She had a photographic memory for architecture and a gift for turning chaos into symmetry. People twice her age paused to take notes when she spoke. She was on the fast track until the stick turned blue. The pregnancy was not planned. The man she loved had promised forever until he met the reality of parenthood. He vanished before Zoe was even born. Samantha, devastated but unshaken, walked away from a future lined with patents, promotions, and global conferences and stepped into a different one, filled with quiet diaper changes, budget meals, and lullabies sung over bills she could not quite pay. Now 35, Samantha lived in a modest apartment above a hardware store. Her resume had not seen a new line since her last published white paper 5 years earlier. No company wanted a brilliant systems engineer who had ghosted the industry for half a decade. She had stopped trying to explain. To survive, she worked part-time as a hospital janitor, mopping the same halls she once helped sketch on blueprints. And no one suspected a thing. She was the woman who fixed the vending machines when they jammed, who remembered every nurse's birthday, who made sarcastic jokes about being promoted to mop with both hands. She was invisible in the way people with exceptional minds often are when they choose to be quiet. But one person saw her completely. Her daughter, Zoe Lee, age 6, with a messy bun and mismatched socks, had inherited more than Samantha's intelligence. She had her sharpness, her wit, her curiosity that bordered on inconvenient. She once asked a heart surgeon if he had ever considered the emotional consequences of cutting someone's chest open. When he stammered, she nodded solemnly and offered him half a granola bar. Zoe thought the hospital was the most exciting place in the world. She loved the people, the machines, the way voices echoed in long hallways. "This place is like a spaceship with coffee," she once said. Samantha, trying to be a good mother on a paycheck that ended before the month did, sometimes let her tag along for evening shifts when she could not find a sitter. Zoe would sit quietly in the staff lounge with her colored pencils, occasionally waving at passing doctors like she was royalty. To the staff, Samantha was just Sam, reliable, funny, a little odd, the woman who always seemed to know which supply closet had the spare fuse, or how to reset a frozen biometric panel, even though she never officially worked in tech. To Zoe, she was magic. What no one knew, not the hospital board, not the head of systems, not even the night security, was that Samantha Lee was one of the original architects of the building's intelligent infrastructure. She had helped design the very systems now collapsing under the blackout. And until tonight, she had never told a soul. Not because she was ashamed, but because when you are a single mother who has learned to survive invisibly, the last thing you want is attention. Until someone else's life depends on it, the operating theater had never been so silent. 3 large screens mounted on the wall were meant to live stream a groundbreaking, multi-million-dollar surgical procedure, an experimental cardiac operation using the hospital's latest AI-assisted precision tools. Dozens of international medical investors were watching from around the globe. It was the culmination of 4 years, 300 million United States dollars, and countless sleepless nights. Everything was on the line. The surgeon stood poised with scalpel in hand, guided by a robotic assist system. Monitors displayed vitals, blood pressure, and oxygen flow, all running in seamless sync with the predictive technology designed by Medinova Tech, the hospital's flagship innovation partner. In the viewing lounge above, CEO Jordan Reed stood watching with a tense jawline and folded arms. He was dressed in a dark navy suit, pressed to perfection, a man built for high-stakes pressure and big-money expectations. In his ear, a Bluetooth earpiece hummed with occasional reports from the IT floor, finance, and public relations. He hated being interrupted, which is why when the first flicker hit, he barely twitched. But then the screen in front of him went black. In less than 3 seconds, the lights overhead snapped off, the robotic arm froze mid-Maitner, the monitor tracking the patient's heartbeat emitted one long, painful tone, and then went silent. Across the floor, gasps rose. What happened to the power? Backups should be on by now. We are in the middle of an open chest. Alarms began to blare, first softly, then wildly out of sync. The hallway emergency floodlights flickered once, then died. Every system that was supposed to kick in failed. The internal grid was down. A full hospital blackout. Jordan slammed his hand against the railing and barked into his comms. "Where is the systems team? Get them now!" No response. He pulled the earpiece out and marched toward the surgical command center, passing nurses holding flashlights and techs frantically pushing buttons that no longer responded. The entire hospital was in meltdown. In ICU, ventilators beeped ominously. In neonatal, staff moved incubators by hand. In oncology, the chemotherapy chillers began to rise in temperature by the minute. $300 million. Thousands of lives. No backup, no visibility, no answers. By the time Jordan reached the control corridor, his voice had dropped to a deadly calm. "Where is engineering?" "They are stuck in sublevel 3, someone yelled over the chaos. "Elevator failure! They are locked inside." "Can take Manual override failed. We are running blind." Jordan turned, fury in his chest. "So nobody knows what to do?" From somewhere behind him, a young intern sprinted into the hall, out of breath. "Sir, there is someone trying something in the diagnostics bay. We do not know who she is. She just grabbed a marker and started drawing." Jordan's eyes narrowed. "Then let us go see who thinks they can fix this." The corridor to the diagnostics bay was dim, lit only by the erratic blinking of emergency wall lights. Jordan Reed moved quickly, the soles of his shoes clicking against the tile in sharp rhythm. His assistant jogged behind him, trying to keep up, still explaining something about a woman in scrubs who had taken over. But Jordan had already tuned it out. He rounded the corner and stopped. At the far end of the room stood a woman in scrubs far too big for her frame, the elastic of the pants rolled twice at the waist. Her hair was pulled back in a messy, uneven bun. She was barefoot, her sneakers tossed near the door. In her hand, a red marker. On the whiteboard before her, a rapidly forming schematic, hand-drawn in perfect symmetry. She did not even look up. He watched as she stepped back, squinted, then added another pathway between power junctions. Another nurse leaned in to whisper, "That is the janitor, Samantha. But she is doing something. It looks like an electrical reroute," Jordan finished under his breath. Samantha finally turned and looked at him, calm, direct, with none of the panic that clouded every other face in the building. "I need a flashlight," she said simply. He blanked. "What?" "A flashlight, a strong one, and someone who can help me open the west utility panel near radiology. If I can access the old auxiliary line from the original blueprint, I can reroute partial power to at least stabilize life support in the west wing." "How do you?" "Because I helped design it," she said. "Before your team upgraded to the Medanova smart infrastructure, I mapped the previous electrical core. They kept the skeleton underneath just in case. This blackout has shorted the logic path, but the manual fail-safes, they are still there." Jordan could only stare. Samantha was already moving. She grabbed the flashlight someone handed her and disappeared down a side hall, nurses trailing behind. At the radiology access panel, she pried open the latch, climbed into the narrow cavity, and began instructing the young intern at her side. "Junction 12, third wire, blue. Do not touch the red, it is fused. 1 minute. 2. In the pediatric wing, monitors blinked. In the surgical recovery unit, lights began to hum back to life. Then, a scream echoed from down the hallway. "Vitals are returning." The surgeon in Operating Theater 3 had his hands still deep inside a patient's chest when the flatline was interrupted by the welcome return of a steady rhythm. He looked up at the monitor. It was no longer dead. Oxygen flow restored. Pulse recovered. A beat of stunned silence. Then the room erupted. Tears. Relief poured down faces like water in a desert. Back in diagnostics, Samantha pulled herself from the panel, hands smeared with dust and metal shavings. She wiped her forehead with her sleeve and returned to the whiteboard, already outlining the secondary grid relay. She did not bask in the attention. She barely seemed aware of it. She simply worked, silent, precise, focused. Like someone born to restore order when everything else failed. Jordan stood there, breath shallow, unable to look away. This was no janitor. This was someone the hospital never should have forgotten. And for the first time in his professional life, he felt completely unqualified to speak. The temporary lights flickered again, casting strange shadows on the whiteboard, still filled with Samantha's marker-drawn blueprint. Jordan had not moved from his spot. He was still watching her. That was when the double doors at the far end slammed open. The systems engineering team burst in, sweat-soaked and furious. Their lead technician, Grant Holloway, a man who wore his authority like a nameplate, stormed forward, a tangle of wires in one hand, shouting over the din. "What the hell is going on in here?" His eyes landed on Samantha. And narrowed. "Who gave you access to diagnostics? Who authorized this override?" Samantha did not flinch. "I did." "You do not work here." "I work in this building." "That is not the same." Behind him, 2 other members of the team began surveying the wall and the open utility panel. One muttered, "These were the old relay points, pre-logic grid." "Which means she was tampering with legacy systems," Grant snapped. "This is a Class 1 breach. She could have triggered a catastrophic surge." Jordan opened his mouth to speak, but the other executives had already arrived. Vice President of Risk, Director of Legal, chief financial officer. All of them pushing through, some breathless, others angry. A woman in a slate gray suit raised her voice. "She is in unauthorized scrubs. No ID, we have no record of her. For all we know, she could be a liability plant." Another voice. "She has no medical clearance." Another. "We do not even know her name." Samantha stood at the center of the storm, unmoved. Her eyes scanned the group like someone who had seen men like this before, barking, flailing, looking to assign blame when they had none of the answers themselves. She spoke slowly, clearly. "My name is Samantha Lee. I was a systems architect before I became a single mother with a mop. I helped design the internal framework of this hospital 7 years ago, the same one you are all now standing in. You upgraded the software, changed the lighting, and branded it smart, but the bones, the skeleton of your backup power, I drew that, and tonight, it saved lives." Silence fell like a curtain. Grant scoffed, still defiant. "She has no clearance." Jordan's voice finally came, low and steady. "He has authority now." Grant blinked. However, Jordan turned slowly to face the room. "She finishes what she started. You all report to her. Anyone not on board can leave." No one moved. Samantha's expression did not change, but something deep behind her eyes softened, as if the weight she had carried silently for years had shifted, just slightly, from her shoulders. She nodded once, then turned back to the board, and kept drawing. The hospital's underbelly was silent, except for the soft hum of failing emergency lights and the rhythmic footfalls of a skeleton crew following a woman who should not have been leading them, but was. Samantha walked swiftly, flashlight tucked under her chin, hands outstretched. The air was thick with metallic dust and heat. She passed rusted panels, loose cables, and old labels faded with time, but she moved like someone who knew every inch of the layout by memory. Behind her, 2 junior techs from the Metanova team followed nervously, one holding a tablet with 0 signal, the other clutching a wire tester that beeped uselessly. Samantha spoke without turning. "Breaker panel 7G, find the red junction, check the fuse with a rubber grip. Do not let the metal touch the panel, it is an old casing, unshielded." The younger tech stammered. "But how do you know?" "I built it," she replied. No arrogance, just fact. Back upstairs, the staff lounge glowed faintly in the emergency light. Zoe sat curled on a couch, legs dangling. Her hands moved in quick little circles as she colored something on the back of a laminated dinner menu. The security guard glanced over her shoulder. "How is that?" Zoe grinned, showing her drawing. It was a tall woman in scrubs with a cape made of wires, standing in front of a hospital building lit up like a spaceship. "That's my mommy," she said proudly. "She fixes everything." Meanwhile, Samantha ducked into a narrow crawl space beneath the server room, her back pressed against the ceiling, knees bent, sweat dripping into her eyes. Her voice crackled over a borrowed radio. "Start the capacitor alignment countdown. When I say rotate, move the magnetic relay in sequence. 3 seconds each." The crew above hesitated. Jordan's voice came through the line. "You sure this will not fry the whole thing?" "It will work. Trust me." Jordan paused. Then, "All right, you are in charge." She closed her eyes for a second, then moved. With hands covered in grime and calluses, she rewired the grounding rod first. Then she reached behind an old distribution board, flipped the release, and jammed a secondary relay into place with a grunt. Sparks jumped but did not bite. "Now," she said. Upstairs, the lights blinked once. Then all at once, everything roared back to life. Surgical Theater 3 lit up in full illumination. The robotic assistant came back online. Screens turned blue, then green. Beeping filled the room in a rhythm everyone had been praying to hear. A nurse gasped. Cheers erupted. 2 surgeons embraced, tears in their eyes. In oncology, patients who had been trembling in the dark whispered thanks. In the NICU, warmers buzzed to temperature again. Up in the executive wing, A room full of legal advisors and engineers turned to stare at the screen now showing the system's reboot progress bar, completed. Samantha crawled out from under the panel, soaked in sweat, her borrowed scrubs torn at one knee. She blinked at the sudden light, then looked up. Jordan was standing in the doorway. Everyone else had frozen, all eyes on her. He took a step closer, still holding the radio in one hand. "Who are you? Really?" Samantha looked up at him, a tired smile touching the corner of her lips. The woman no one saw, until you had no choice. In the aftermath of the system recovery, the hospital buzzed with quiet awe. People spoke in hushed voices. Whispers of the janitor turned healer turned through every department. Samantha had returned to the staff lounge, sitting beside Zoe, her fingers tangled in her daughter's soft curls, as the little girl leaned on her shoulder, half asleep. But far away, in a dimmed corner of the IT command center, a young engineer named Miles Chen stared at a line of code on his monitor. He had been running log checks from the night's events, trying to verify who had done what and when. But something odd caught his eye. An old architect code that had not been touched in over 6 years had been reactivated during the reboot. The signature read, SLE_ApolloNet. He leaned forward, curiosity piqued. Samantha Lee? He searched the internal registry. Nothing current. But then he opened the old archived records. There it was. Samantha Lee, Principal Infrastructure Architect, Apollo Health Network Initiative. A pioneer in hospital systems architecture, former MIT honors graduate, recruited by multiple Silicon Valley firms, keynote speaker at MedTech Future Conference, once featured on the cover of Wired Health Quarterly, resigned mysteriously 6 years ago. Miles blinked at the screen, then slowly turned in his chair and ran for the elevator. Later that night, Jordan stood alone in his office, looking out over the city. His jacket hung over a chair, sleeves rolled up. The quiet was heavy. There was a soft knock. He turned. It was Samantha. He did not say anything at first, just watched her walk in, still in the scrubs, a bit cleaner now, hair damp from washing her face. "I was going to ask who you are," he said finally, "but I think I already know." Samantha tilted her head, curious. "You built ApolloNet," he said. "That was your code I saw in the reboot logs." She exhaled quietly. "You could have had anything," he continued. "You were on track to run entire systems, to reshape this industry. So why were you mopping floors instead of running companies?" Samantha met his gaze without flinching. "Because 6 years ago I had to choose between proving I could change the world or being there when my daughter said her first word, took her first steps, cried through her first fever, and she needed me more than the world did." Jordan blinked. Her voice was not defensive, it was simply true. "No one ever chose family over success for me," he said softly. They stood there in silence. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Outside the window, the city flickered with life. "I was not hiding," Samantha added after a moment. "I just stepped out of the light for a while." He nodded slowly. And then something shifted. Not in the room, but in their eyes. Like two people who suddenly recognized a mirror in the other. The next morning, the hospital board convened in the top-floor conference room, one usually reserved for financial projections and merger talks. But this was different. The tension was thick. The heads of departments sat in stiff suits, papers stacked in front of them, screens showing recovery data from the night before. Some still looked skeptical, others curious, a few clearly furious. At the head of the table, Jordan Reed stood tall. "Before we begin, I want to be clear," he said, voice steady. "Last night the entire East Wing would have lost power. We would have lost patience, and the surgery that was live-streamed to 6 investors would have ended in tragedy." He looked around the room. "You all know the woman who prevented that? Samantha Lee." A few confused glances. Someone whispered, "The janitor." Jordan let that hang in the air, then continued. "She is not a janitor. She is the former lead systems architect of the Apollo Health Network. She designed half of this hospital's infrastructure. She left the industry 6 years ago for personal reasons. And last night, when everything failed, she succeeded. There was a brief silence. Then someone cleared their throat. "So, what are you suggesting?" Jordan replied, "I am proposing we offer her the role of Chief Systems Architect, immediately." Murmurs rippled through the room. One board member protested. She bypassed protocol. She reconfigured without clearance. "She saved lives," Jordan countered, voice hardening. "And not one of your protocols stopped the blackout. She did." That afternoon, Samantha was called into the boardroom. She stepped in with calm eyes and her usual quiet posture, wearing clean clothes but no pretense. Jordan gave her a soft smile. "They are offering you the role, the one you deserve." Samantha shook her head gently. "I appreciate it, but I cannot accept. I am not here for titles." He blinked, caught off guard. "Why not?" She opened her mouth to answer, but paused. That night, in the small apartment above the laundromat, Zoe sat cross-legged on the bed with her mother, coloring another superhero scene. This one had Samantha standing in front of a hospital, glowing with tiny stars. "Emily, did you say no, Mommy?" Zoe asked innocently. "Because I already fixed what needed fixing," Samantha said. Zoe frowned. "But if you fixed it once and then leave, what if it breaks again?" Samantha laughed softly. Zoe added, "Why fix everything and not stay to make it better?" That question hung in the room like a thread of gold. The next morning, Samantha returned to the hospital. She walked into the boardroom unannounced. Jordan stood when he saw her. "I will accept the position," she said, "on one condition." Everyone turned. She smiled. "My title must be Systems Architect, not Miracle Girl." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then someone chuckled. Another laughed. Soon the whole room joined in. Jordan grinned, shaking his head. "Hurricane, deal." Samantha leaned forward, voice playful. "But I still reserve the right to mop floors when I need to think." Weeks passed. The hospital transformed. Subtly at first. Systems once sluggish began to run with elegant efficiency. Power backups were rerouted, security updated, and outdated protocols quietly replaced with Samantha's handwritten logic now formalized into digital brilliance. Gone were the old clipboard audits and cluttered server logs. In their place were living blueprints, interactive overlays that Samantha designed herself. Nurses began calling them Zoe maps, because each layout had a tiny cartoon star hidden somewhere in tribute to her daughter's drawings. One morning, Samantha walked into the newly renovated systems wing. The staff, now fully under her direction, looked up from their stations. She greeted them with her usual calm wit. "Morning, team. Today's goal: no blackouts, no fires, and one spontaneous dance break." Laughter rippled through the room. They were working harder than ever, but smiling more. Jordan visited often now. Sometimes with questions, sometimes without. He would bring her coffee just the way she liked it, black with a cinnamon stick, and linger by her desk longer than necessary. They never spoke of that night, not directly. But sometimes their eyes would meet, mid-sentence, and stay there. One Friday afternoon, Samantha invited Zoe to the control room for a tour. Zoe wore her favorite purple overalls and carried a clipboard. Jordan knelt down to greet her. "You must be the famous artist behind our secret stars." Zoe beamed. "I am also the snack supervisor." "Well," he said, straightening, "you are clearly in charge." Samantha watched them, heart full. She had not let herself imagine joy like this for a long time. Zoe tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, you are like a magician with computers." Samantha grinned. "Not a magician, sweetheart. Just someone who finally gets to be all the things she is, at once." That evening, the board sent Jordan a performance review report. It was glowing. Highest efficiency metrics in 10 years. Patient satisfaction up. Staff morale through the roof. He read the report once, then pushed it aside. Instead, he pulled out a note Zoe had slipped into his coat pocket earlier. It was a drawing of Samantha holding up a glowing motherboard like a trophy, with Jordan standing beside her. Over their heads, in big block letters, Zoe had written, "Team Awesome Fixers." He laughed out loud. In a late-night strategy session, Samantha led a presentation outlining future hospital tech integrations. She spoke with quiet confidence, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, eyes focused. One executive leaned over to Jordan and whispered, "She is not just brilliant, she is what this place was missing." Jordan nodded. "She is what I was missing too." But he said it more to himself than anyone else. 1 year later, the hospital's rooftop garden glowed under soft golden lights, strung like stars between whiteboards and server cables, repurposed into playful decorations. What began as a simple celebration of the system's upgrade had become something more, something quietly magical. Samantha stood at the edge of the terrace in a fitted navy jumpsuit, elegant and effortless. Her hair was pinned up, revealing delicate silver earrings Zoe had made with beads and wires from old equipment. Around her, people laughed, mingled, sipped champagne from plastic flutes. Zoe twirled nearby in a sunflower yellow dress, her curls bouncing as she showed off her latest superhero sketch to one of the senior surgeons. Her drawing? A woman holding a glowing cable in one hand and a stethoscope in the other. "One more," Zoe said. "Second, attention," she called. The caption read, "Super System Mom Saves the Day." Samantha felt someone step beside her. Jordan. He was dressed in a tailored charcoal blazer, open collar, and that unmistakable blend of confidence and calm that had deepened since the night of the blackout. He held 2 glasses. "Sparkling water," he said, handing one to her. "We are both on call, technically." She smiled. "How responsible of us." A beat of quiet, the kind that feels full. "I have been thinking," he said, voice soft. "Dangerous," she teased. He chuckled, then turned to her more fully. "When we met, I was sure I had everything under control, budgets, systems, public image, but I was running on backup power inside." Samantha looked at him, eyes warm. "And then a woman in scrubs rewired my entire world." He reached into his pocket, pulled out something small, a circuit board, but it had been fashioned into a pendant, hanging from a delicate silver chain. "For the woman who reminds me that no system is beyond repair, not even mine." Samantha blinked back, tears. Zoe's voice rang out behind them. "If you are going to kiss, do it before the juice melts the cake." Laughter erupted from the guests. Samantha reached for the necklace, fingers brushing Jordan's. "I guess this means you are not just the CEO anymore." "You and who am I then?" She tilted her head. "Part of the team. Team Awesome Fixers." Their lips met in a soft, perfect kiss. The applause was spontaneous, but the moment was private, just theirs. Later that evening, Samantha tucked Zoe into bed in their new apartment above the systems wing. Zoe yawned, then asked, "Mommy, did you fix the hospital forever?" Samantha brushed her daughter's hair back gently. "No system stays perfect, but I will be here every time it breaks." Zoe nodded sleepily. "You are still my superhero." In the final scene, we return to the hospital rooftop. Samantha stands beside a large screen, showing a new initiative, Operation Human Logic, a mentorship program she and Jordan co-founded, blending tech with empathy, system design with soul. Jordan lifts Zoe onto his shoulders. She laughs, arms out like airplane wings. And Samantha, standing beside them, glowing under the lights, knows that somewhere between chaos and code, she has found not just her place, but her people. And sometimes, the person who saves a life is not wearing a white coat, but a janitor's badge. She does not ask for applause. She does not need the spotlight. Because she has already rebuilt something far greater than systems. She rebuilt trust, love, and a future for herself and her daughter. If you are watching this and carrying a silent strength the world keeps overlooking, this story is for you. Love does not always arrive in grand entrances. Sometimes it walks in quietly, with grease on its hands, or a flashlight in the dark. Thank you for watching this love story. We hope it touched your heart like it touched ours. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love reading your thoughts, your cities, your emotions, truly. And if you believe in stories that stir the soul, in emotional stories that make you cry and smile at once, in heartwarming stories of single moms, daughters, and unexpected love, please subscribe for more soul-stirring stories just like this one. Your support helps us keep sharing these moments that matter. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and remember, sometimes the hero is already in the room. We just need to look closer.